All right. So this is Soul, take one. Mark, good morning, or evening, or late night, whatever time it is for you. This is Last Minute Movies. Today's episode is, as you could tell from the name, is about one of Pixar's most recent films called Soul. And it's quite a lot. There's a lot about this film we're going to be breaking down today. So
we're going to have to work on your intros, Igor. We're going to work on his intros. Don't worry, guys. This masterpiece, one of Pixar's greatest films yet. I feel like every
That's
fucking
debatable.
Pixar film... for me, I feel like every Pixar film is hailed as like the best one, or oh, this is the best one, or this.
Yep.
It's like everything Pixar makes is good. You know what I'm saying? Like Pixar's it's just consistently, just very, very, very good stuff.
yeah, I mean, there's like also a whole thing on which Pixar movies their magnum opus, and I think a lot of people think it's either like Wall-E or Ratatouille. I don't know if this is their magnum opus, but it certainly has a place to be with all the stuff we know about it.
The thing is that Pixar's done so many films talking about real life issues now that I feel like the whole idea of a magnum opus for a Pixar film is kind of like, it's not a real thing because they talk about so many different issues. I feel like whatever one connects you the most, or you feel connected to the most, is your magnum opus.
Yeah.
So if you like if the idea of climate change and how humanity can improve themselves, reaches your heart, then Wall-E is your magnum opus. If the ideas of growing up and becoming an adult touches you, then maybe like Inside Out or Toy Story is your magnum opus. Mm-hmm. If you're a parent and you're like, and you're really connected to your kid and you're trying to figure out how can I raise my kid in a world that's scary and all of that, but have him grow up and be a mature person, and maybe like Finding Nemo is your magnum opus, So like,
wow,
like,
that was oddly specific.
Yeah, very oddly specific. But anyways, like any Pixar film could potentially be your magnum opus,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where does this rank for you in your magnum opus of Pixar films? Like, how do you rank this film? Where's your ranking?
Yeah, think about it this way. My ranking of Pixar films is like a carousel. It like constantly rotates in and out and keeps changing. But
it's always changing.
For me, Soul is definitely at exactly the same kind of plane with Inside Out, just because of the subject matter and how they're in many, many ways similar. And actually, the creators of the film also feel the same way. It feels very similar to Inside Out to them. But yeah, to me, like Wall-E and Ratatouille are kind of like my favorites. And like a close third would be Incredibles. And like Inside Out and Soul are also within that same like plane. And it's like you said, it's literally just me and my subjective perception of the subject matter of every movie. So
yeah, no one's right in this. And this whole like best film of all time sort of thing. It's all subjective, It's such a silly. When you talk about like best films of all time, or what is the best this of all time, there's no right or wrong answer. What might connect you and make you go, oh my gosh, is not going to do that for another person, Or like, for example, there's certain films that I absolutely loathe, yet people love, and I will never understand them.
Like what? Give me like one example.
I can't say it. We're going to just have to not talk about that.
All right.
It makes me cringe when I think about it. I get angry, okay?
Fair.
But it's a DC film. It's a DC film. Know that. But anyways.
Oh God.
Everything. It's all subjective,
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess where this film ranks for me. It's weird because like I recognize like okay, so I would say I definitely put this film in my top 3 Pixar films of all time. For me personally.
Okay.
Just because I get the one of the things that I really connect to is the culture of Seoul. You know, being black myself, obviously. You know, I really get the culture. I you know, the jazz. I understand that as that's been like a part of my life. Like music's been a part of my life as well. I get like, you know, and it's set in New York. I spend a lot of time in New York as well as Hawaii. So I get the culture of, you know, Black Americans in New York, or just New York living and all of that. And I also really like the theme and the message of the film. As an artist myself, you know, I really connected to it a lot deeper than I did in other Pixar films, because, you know, like, and I love The Incredibles. It's in my top 3 as well. But I can't connect to being a superhero because I'm not a superhero. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I can't really connect to that story. Like, I can connect to it because it's so real and it's so human, but that specific aspect of being a superhero, I don't understand, and no one's going to understand it, right? But I understand this because even though I'm not a musician, I'm still an artist, I'm still black, so, you know, I understand. I feel I'm more connected to it, you know? So, yeah.
Makes sense. And I mean, you know, Incredibles, they focus on the human aspect of the superhero, but Soul focuses on the aspect of, like, being alive, which is the point where it becomes, you know, the aspect of it that the audience can relate to. And
and purpose as well.
It just, I think that alone makes the execution of this film is that much more difficult. Like Inside Out definitely, I bet, had the same problems with, you know, establishing the inner world they built in that's supposed to go, you know, like the concept has to feed into the moral of the story and the things they want to teach us. So I think something that Soul and Inside Out both share is that the worlds that they create in many ways are structured to tell the story and kind of portray the idea in an extremely specific way. Like, for example, I'm thinking about, like, the idea of Soul, right, is to show human emotions and how impactful they can be on one's life, because there's a universe inside of each one of us, inside of every individual. And when one feels things like, you know, doubt, when somebody like really face plans in their lives, with the current kind of like social morality of things that we have, is that if you're not successful in your career, if you're not successful in life in general, then, you know, there's not much to you. And that can be draining. It can be extremely existentially draining. And this film is kind of there to remind us that life is not just a career and not just your passion. Even though passion is important, it's still not everything. And it's really refreshing. I'm not going to lie. Like in 2020, 2021, when things have gone this far, like, you know, we are technically the burnout generation, the millennials and the Zoomers. A lot of times are referred to as the burnout generation because they've been preached this idea of following your passion at all times, at all costs, and then just grind your way to success. And, you know, one would say, like, you know, find something you love and you won't have to work a day in your life. And with this mentality, one can just spend every single day of their life doing nothing but grinding, and then, you know, just like demolish their minds and bodies in the process because they love what they're doing. And while passion in its own is not bad at all, what is important to realize is that it is still work. You're still putting energy into it, and your life cannot revolve around nothing else but that one thing you do. Even though it is central and it's magical in its own right, we shouldn't forget that. But yeah, like, there's more to life. And like,
well, that's it. You summed up the movie, Igor. We don't need to do this anymore. All right, thank you everybody for watching the video. Subscribe, like, go to our social media. Bye. Okay, well, before I ramble on what I think about the film, let's talk about, like, the plot a little bit, you know, as much as we can.
All right.
So you want to take that? You usually
No, you do it. It's your turn.
I do it? Okay.
You make me do the intros, you make me do the plot. Why don't you do the plot?
Okay, so the film is about, like, this character named Joe Gardner. He is a piano jazz teacher in New York City. And he's kind of, I don't want to say, like, he's a nobody, but he's kind of like trying to figure it out, even though he's, like, a middle-aged man. And his mother, who owns, like, this tailor shop and all that, is kind of disappointed in the fact that he chose to be a musician and he's doing all these like meaningless gigs, and he wants him to get like an actual real job. And he actually gets that because the school proposes him to be like the music teacher of the school, and his mom's very happy about it, but he wants to be not known for like being a music teacher. He wants to be like playing at jazz clubs and all that. And so then one of his former students gives him a call, is like, hey, so we don't have this, we need a piano player for this famous jazz group. And he's just all like, this sounds amazing. And then he goes and he auditions for it.
I'm Joe. I teach middle school band. Got it, go for it. Today started out as the best day of my life.
Back here tonight, first show's at 7.
And he does really, really well. And then they're like, you're on, you know, get yourself ready for tonight. You're going to play with us. And then he's like, yes, awesome. And then as he goes outside, he's like, I booked the job. And he's telling everyone that.
Yes! Woohoo! You know what that's gonna say? Joe Gardner. I did it. I got the gig.
He falls through a manhole and fucking pretty much dies. Like, it's kind of crazy. You're like, wait a minute, did he just fucking die?
Yep.
But, and then he's in this...
I gotta say, at that part of the movie, I realized that, you know, Pixar's movies are all amazing, but I think Soul by far just, like, has the most balls to just, like, alright, and then he dies, and then there's, like, the letter to the eternity itself, and we're just gonna keep it there. And it's only been 15 minutes of the movie, by the way. Enjoy what's coming.
Exactly. And so then he's in this thing called The Great Beyond, and that's basically where all the souls go to, you know, meet their end. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm supposed to play. My life isn't over yet. And I have no idea how, but somehow he's able to fucking get out of the great beyond, and he ends up going into this thing called the Great Before.
Is this heaven?
No.
Is it H-E double hockey sticks?
Hell. Quiet, coyote. It's easy to get turned around. This isn't the Great Beyond. It's the Great Before.
The Great Before?
Oh, we call it the U Seminar now. Rebranding.
Where a bunch of souls go into like babies, or they to go and become human, they enter like planet Earth. And then he meets like these, I don't know what you call them. I guess you call them like cosmic entities, like the Marvel nerd, DC nerd. Well, brain of me is like they're cosmic entities.
They're kind of like I like to refer to them as the ethereals because it just kind of makes sense. But the film explains several times what exactly they are. But they're basically like the shreds of universe itself that is trying to kind of like that are multi-dimensional, that are basically trying to comprehend themselves.
Or like soul counselors, whatever you want to call them. And so basically, and they're all named Jerry, which is hilarious.
That depends on the department they're in, because I believe
that's true, it does. Yeah,
there was a Larry,
there's Terry, then there's Jerry, then there's a Larry, I think, something like that. And so one of the soul counselors ends up telling them like, hey, are you here to mentor the souls, to help them to mentor the souls, to get them ready and prepped so that they can go to Earth and become human beings, or become whatever? And then he's just like, okay, yeah, sure, because he's thinking maybe he can, you know, go back to Earth. That's his way to get back to Earth, so he can go and play. And then he gets approached by a soul named 22, and supposedly 22 has been the soul for like thousands of years by now.
22 has been at the U Seminar for quite some time and has had such notable mentors as Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, and Mother Teresa.
I made her cry.
Ignore that.
He's essentially like given like an impossible task. But so then what ends up happening is that he's trying to, he's going through like his memories, trying to show her like, no, life on Earth, it could be like this, it could be like that, look at what I did. But as he's looking through his memories, he's like, what the hell? My life is meaningless, because even though I have these talents, it's really hard hitting. It's like hard hitting. It's like, ooh, God, like I feel personally attacked. Like
it hit me hard. I was looking at it. It's so casually, just like demolishes you as an audience member.
And it's a fucking supposed to be a children's film. Yeah, it's crazy. And so then, and so then he's just all like, and then he's just all like, but my purpose is to be this piano player. That's the meaning of life. It's my purpose, but I haven't been living up to my purpose. And so then what happens is that 22 is all like, oh, I'm sorry about that. Well, I guess I can help you go back to Earth. And so they end up going to this this separate plane called the Zone, and it's where people who have like these passions go into like this trance, you know, and so actually earlier in the film, Joe, when he was playing piano during the audition, he entered the Zone because he was so entranced by playing. His passion is playing the piano, and so when it's kind of interesting because it's a real life thing. I almost would call it like flow state. So there's this thing in martial arts where you hit this thing called like flow state. Once, like, say you're like fighting and all of that, and you're just like really in the zone, you're dodging attacks, you're throwing your own, and your timing's impeccable, everything's impeccable. You enter this thing called flow state, and flow state isn't just a fighting thing. It could be like meditative. It can be when you're like, say if I'm on stage and I'm like really in it, that can be your flow state. Flow state can pretty much be anything, and this is what the flow state, the zone is basically physically personified as like a flow state.
I think like the film kind of heavily points out that it's subjective to everybody. Everybody can be in a zone in their own way. What I really love about that thing is that it seems like your passion can absolutely be a tool that allows you to enter the zone. So it's kind of like, it's very mechanical in that sense. But
it can also be your downfall, because there's these creatures in the zone that become like these shadowy squid monster figures if their passions suddenly turn into obsession and something bad, right? And so then, like for example, you see like this guy who works at this
like a trading facility
company, trading
facility
or something.
He was trading stocks.
Trading stocks, and they meet these Joe and 22. They end up meeting these characters. His name is Moonwind. That's right. His name is Moonwind.
Yeah. That's I love that. He is low key one of my favorite characters.
Yeah,
I love that. I love him so much because he's just like a regular New York City weirdo.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That New York City weirdo lives one of the happiest, most fulfilling lives.
Yeah, and he's a sign twirler. It's such a Yeah, he feels like a real New Yorker. Like he used to beat one of those guys who's just like, hey, what's up, man? You know, like one of those guys down in like the village or something like that. And so then his job is he kind of just, it's not really even a job. He kind of just like, you know, travels through the zone on this like really cool looking pirate ship along with a few for this. I got some Treasure Planet vibes.
Yep, I almost want to call it the acid ship because of the types of sails it has, like these color bursts.
Exactly.
Like, there is definitely some kind of hallucinogenics involved.
And his thing is that he releases people from their like obsessions. And so you see this guy who's trading stocks, and Moonwind ends up like releasing him from his obsession. And then you see like in the real world, he like gets up, he's like, what the fuck am I doing with... He doesn't say fuck, but he says, what am I doing with my life?
Make a trade?
Looks like another hedge fund manager.
Now, to reconnect to your earthly body.
What am I doing with my life? I'm alive! I'm alive! Free yourself!
He's like, I'm out of here. And then he like goes off. He starts like throwing everything around, and he's like, I'm gonna go live life. You just totally destroyed your mic. Yep. And so then what they're trying to do is that then they're gonna go and they're gonna try to put Joe back in his body. And they try to do that, but the process is rushed, and 22 ends up being put in Joe's body, while Joe ends up in this cat's body.
In like a therapy cat.
Yeah, therapy cat. Yeah, in the hospital.
It's so bizarre, and like you don't expect to end up there, but then you do.
Yeah, I didn't expect that either. But it's hilarious. And there's like
turns.
A lot of wacky stuff happens, but basically what ends up happening is that 22, because 22 is like scared of life and doesn't want to like be there or anything like that. But then she ends up having like a really good time being on Earth, and she's all like, I want to find my purpose and all of that. And then Joe's like, I need to get back in my body because I have this concert I gotta do, man.
Yep.
And then all while this is happening, I think one of the cosmic hierarchies named Terry, who takes into account how many people go into the great beyond, ends up like, hey, there's a soul that's missing.
Yeah, he finds out that Joe was like scheduled to die and he didn't, so he like goes to look through the directory and yeah.
Exactly.
This weird. The council. There's a soul missing.
Okay. And so then what ends up happening is then Terry goes to try to look for Joe and, you know, put him back into the plane of...
You know, yeah, Joe's supposed to die.
To the great beyond. Tries to take him back. He's supposed to die. And so then a lot of wacky shenanigans happen. 22 ends up figuring out, like, I really want to be, like, I want to be on Earth. I'm supposed to find my purpose. And then Joe's all like, the only reason why you've liked this Earth and you find any purpose is because you're in my body, because I have a purpose, and because I've experienced my life. You're experiencing my memories. You're experiencing what it's like to be there. Give me my body back. And then she's like, I'm not going to give you your body back. I need to find my purpose. She ends up trying to run away before the process can be done with Moonwind to return Joe back in his body. And then Terry ends up taking them back into the plane. And then you find out that 22. So these things, these souls that are supposed to go to Earth, before they go to Earth, they're supposed to
they get like
have
a pass.
like this
the moment,
pass, yeah.
Okay, the moment where they obtain all of the kind of elements of their personalities that they need, of their character, it turns into what is essentially an Earth pass, and that allows them to actually start a life on Earth.
A giant planet appears on their chest. And then 22 is like, fine, take it, and then gives Joe the Earth pass. He gets back into his body. He gets his suit. He goes and he performs. But then something inside him, he feels like kind of empty. He's like, this is great and all, but there's just something wrong. And then he ends up feeling guilty about 22. And so then he goes back into the what's it called? The zone.
Yeah.
And then he ends up trying to find 22, and 22's become one of those like shadowy monsters.
I messed up. I need to find 22.
I'm afraid she's become a lost soul.
What?
I'll explain on the way. When neither of you returned to the half note, I suspected something had gone wrong. I came back here, and that's when I spotted her. Lost souls are obsessed by something that disconnects them from life. And now that 22 has technically lived, she's become one of them.
There!
Good show!
Wait,
because
can
her
I just say
obsession
that
has become...
This is so extremely bizarre because when he enters the zone by himself willingly that one time, it basically, like, for me, that meant that this film just killed its main character, brought him back to life, and then basically taught that character how to access the in-between space by following his passion. And all of that, like, we learned within first maybe hour of the film.
Yeah, there's so many lessons in this film, but basically 22's obsession, she ends up becoming obsessed with trying to find like a purpose in life and all that. But then what ends up happening is that Joe then is able to give her like the Earth pass and say that, he gives her the Earth pass and says, take this and go to Earth and find your purpose. And then she's like, are you sure? Aren't you gonna stay in your died? He's like, well, I had my time. I experienced life. And then she's like, okay. So then she goes to Earth, and then he's in the afterlife. But then Jerry, I believe, one of the cosmic hierarchies, offers him another chance to go back to Earth and live his life. And then like the meaning, and this is something I found like the most powerful, is that you end up finding out that the meaning of life is not, you don't get your Earth pass because you find your purpose. You get your Earth pass because you want to go and you want to experience life. Like, having a purpose in life is great. It's all good. Having your passion, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But the true meaning of being alive is to experience, is the connections that you make, is the people that you meet, is the loved ones that you have and experiencing life for what it really is, instead of being obsessed with the specific purpose. Like, the reason why Joe didn't feel different after his concert is because of the fact that purposes can only mean so much. You have to live your life to the fullest in order to really appreciate what's around you and what you do.
And I
which
gotta
is something
say,
I thought was so fucking brilliant.
no, honestly, that is definitely the highest point of the movie for me too.
Yeah,
and I gotta
for sure.
say, like, just the way that scene is executed, it's so beautifully written, because after Joe is like the whole movie, Joe, just like pretty much all of us, is trying to get that gig, right? And the moment he gets that gig, it's like a celebratory kind of, ecstatic experience that we feel. But then he kind of stands outside of that, the half note jazz club where he played, and this lady, this like incredible character on her own, the sax player, stands behind him, and it's kind of like the question is, what's next? And she says, we're gonna play there again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after. Like, the life goes on. And I feel like, for me personally, it just basically meant that when we think of success, we only think about our path on how to achieving this thing that we really want. But we never think about what's going to happen the day after we get that great victory. What's going to happen the day after we get the Nobel Peace Prize? What are you going to do with your life? How are you going to enjoy it? It's not always about the final outcome. It's not always about getting the gig. What are you going to do once you get it? You need to live your life in a fulfilling way that doesn't focus on exclusively personal or professional achievements. It's not always about a journey. Very oftentimes you just have to enjoy that moment. And I feel like that scene, just like, it did it so well because of the way it's phrased. We're gonna go back to play there again and again.
Exactly.
And again.
so I think the idea about a passion, I think the true meaning of the film isn't about like purpose and passion, because purpose and passion about things is only an aspect of the life, but the way that you live your life is how you can appreciate. It's how you can. It's just so good. I wish this film came out like 2 years ago, because I actually was having like a very similar Igor. Well, it's personal, but Igor could probably say like, oh yeah, 2 years ago, your boy Alian was struggling a little bit with thinking about things like this, about your passion, your creativity, what you do. And for me, I took granted of in my life. I'll talk about it a little bit. I was at a specific point in my life where I was like really, really depressed, and about being about my artistry. There was like things that I strive to do and I work to do, but I didn't end up getting them, and I just felt kind of empty about it. And I put all my purpose and my meaning in life into that, and I didn't end up getting it. So I was uber fucking depressed. And so I kind of had to really not refigure out the meaning of life, but I had to appreciate life outside of my artistry. I had to do other things that were outside of my acting, outside of filmmaking stuff, outside of any of that. And I had to just experience and live life, outside of my passions. And once I was able to do that, I was able to heal myself, and I was able to appreciate my life so much more, instead of being super depressed anymore. It's kind of weird that this film comes out like right after I had that, because I was like, this is like the film I needed to see back then. I needed to see that film. I had to figure it out for myself, but I wish that film came out back like 2019. It's such an interesting.
Yeah.
It's such a good. Like, every artist needs to watch this film for sure. Every single artist needs to watch this film.
And honestly,
it's a must watch.
It's a must watch for anybody. But one of the writers of Soul actually said the same thing about the collective of people that worked on the film, saying that Pixar is a group of workaholics and that are trying to finesse their craft to make that expression as clear and as perfect as possible. And a lot of it was actually a reflection on that type of approach, which is where that whole, the way they treat passion in the movie came from. They would never say that this is a bad thing that is happening to them because they feel possessed by it. And I feel like in many ways, this is actually kind of Pixar artists and animators, telling their own little story in there through the craft of passion. Because this is like kind of something that happened behind the scenes. This film was created by just like any other Pixar film. It was created by the fusion of writing and animation, but this one was especially challenging. Just like Inside Out, if I was an animator and a writer came to me and went like, I need a train of thought, just like a visual representation of a train of thought and like memory islands, and you go like, alright, let me sketch some shit out, let's see what happens. You know, same thing here. There was like no direct definition of like what the ethereals, the soul counselors, were supposed to look like. They were created from like almost purely the imagination of the animators. And a lot of these decisions in the film came specifically from that, just like the animators' own kind of zoning in and creating what's coming out on the other side, because it wasn't in the writing. It wasn't like, you know, nobody said the ethereal should look like that. That was strictly the artist's choice to do that because they're trying to work for the idea.
Yes, so if you don't mind, I'm actually going to read, so this is on Forbes. Forbes, they talked to or interviewed one of the writers, Mike Jones of Soul, and I just actually would like to, I'd like to read of one of the things that he said about it. So he said, Soul, so Forbes asked this question, Soul seemed like a pushback against the find your purpose theme common in children's animation. Was that a deliberate choice? And then he said, yes, really early on, Pete, Kemp, and I would talk a lot about what it means to live a fulfilled life. We started talking about the things that once it's all said and done and we look back on our life are really going to be fulfilling. And none of it had to do with the financial or artistic success. It had to do with the connections we made with other people. Simple moments like watching a leaf fall or eating a great piece of pie. Those moments had so much more impact when we thought about them than what society sometimes tries to push as living a fulfilled life by living a fulfilled career. So if you want to check out the article, I can link it in the description of the video. For sure, absolutely beautiful. Read it. It's brilliant. But I just want to talk about, like, you know, this is going to be one of the more personal episodes of Last Minute Movies. But I want to just talk about, like, how true that really is. So, Igor, as you know, Igor and I don't actually know if you guys know this, but we'll tell you anyway. So Igor and I met in Stella Adler, right? And Stella Adler is like this acting conservatory. It's funny, Igor met when I was like performing for one of his groups, because I was like in a group above, because I did the program previously during the fall and the summer. And we met, I want to say we met during the spring or something like that. Spring.
It was the fall, the first time.
It was fall.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The first time we met was the introduction ceremony.
Exactly. I remember what they taught us, but I don't remember much about Stella Adler. You know what I do remember though? You, Igor. I remember you. And look where we're at now. Yeah. Like years later, we're still talking, we're doing a podcast together, and that's what Mike Jones meant. Is that even though you might have a lot of other artistic successes, what's really special and what's really meaningful is the connections that you make throughout life, and how you feel about your life and who you meet and all of that. And look, you know, like one, like an artistic thing that we do, right? We have a personal connection, Igor, and now we're doing Last Minute Movies, you know what I'm saying?
We're doing this.
Exactly, and it can lead to other artistic achievements and successes and all of that, but it's the connections that matter the most. You know, because if the connections didn't hit, we wouldn't have this podcast, you know?
But don't ever think about it as a professional connection, because this is just like a meaningful friendship bond, you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
Especially in the field of arts, you know, you have to make sure that the person you're working with, you're comfortable with, and you're actually connected with them. Otherwise, you're not going to make any art.
Exactly, and the people that I had like a strictly based on the profession or about Stella Adler, I don't remember them at all. When it's strictly professional, like I don't remember them. But the people that I have had, that I made personal connections with, like Igor, are still in my life. You know, so They're right. The writers are right. They're correct. You know what I'm saying? They're correct.
Dude, it's Pixar. Of course they're right.
They're always right. Pixar's fucking genius.
Like, I gotta say, this is probably by far the movie that allows itself to be most convoluted without having to explain itself. And I think that's where the magic of this film is, just like Inside Out. Again, just like fucking Inside Out.
Yeah, because the thing is funny about Soul is that compared to other Pixar films, there's not a whole lot going on. Like, okay, obviously him dying in the zone, all of that.
What do you mean there's not a whole much going on?
No, but like compared to the plot of like The Incredibles, where it's like superheroes doing superhero things, or all of that. A lot of the film of Soul is centered around just doing everyday life things.
Yeah.
You know, you're walking through the subway, you're sitting down on a subway, you're drinking the fucking drink from underneath the seat. Oh God, no.
Okay, I just have to say that
as New Yorkers,
yes,
you never do that. So so Igor and I are especially disgusted by
we
that.
just have to say,
You
like,
just
Ali,
do not do
you
that.
lived in New York City for many years.
Yeah.
And I've existed and worked in New York City for many years. So pretty much all the tropes, all the vibes that are there, they hit home and they hit hard.
It did,
Like,
exactly. Do
I
not
have to
drink
say-
what is underneath the subway seats, okay? Do not do that.
No, but there was this one point in the movie, and this is like literally, I wouldn't dare to call myself a New Yorker because again, you know, most of my life was not even in this continent so far. But I have to say,
Call
like,
yourself a New Yorker
for
if
all
you
the
want.
moments,
I'll give you the title. I'm a New Yorker.
I'll take it. For all the moments that this film had, my favorite one by far, like after a couple of days of kind of digesting it, the pizza rat made my heart just like do the thing. I don't know why. It was just like funny in a way that was too relatable because
It was kind of unrealistic.
Yeah.
The rat should have been twice as bigger.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, but that's it. So there was another really interesting moment about 22 that I feel like we should have brought up earlier, but like to me, like the pizza rat moment is also extra special because it's directly connected to the other, which is like my second favorite thing I learned from the film, that it managed to articulate that I don't think any other movie ever did that I know of. When 22 is in Joe's body and she tries that slice of pizza for the first time, we like see her enjoy something truly instead of necessarily like questioning and undermining it, just like she did in all of those theories. Like fucking Mother Teresa herself and like Lincoln were trying to teach her about life. But it's more about experiencing. And Muhammad Ali. But like, you know, over the thousands of years. But I think like the lesson that comes out of it, right? Like in theory, it's so easy to reject things when you're told that this is a thing and you're like, maybe not. And this is a thing and you're like, but there's also this and that, right? Like, I mean, people can debate about college like this forever. Like, why don't you go there? It's just, this and that. In reality, you just have an attitude that, you know, you haven't experienced it firsthand.
Look, man, if anything can give you a revelation about life, it's a hot slice. I'm just saying.
You know?
I'm just saying.
I have this kind of makes this film so accurate to like New York City mentality too, because like when shit goes down, hot slice is. I mean, I also like the bacon, egg, and cheese spelled as one word. Yeah, but it's really cool, this like idea that you can spend thousands of years talking about doing something and then never getting to experience it. And then, like, you know, just do something that is so tiny that will be life-changing because instead of talking and thinking about it, you actually just kind of went on and did it. And that's what it's all about. That's the essence of the movie.
Oh, fuck,
you know?
You're right. I just totally
realized. Pizza.
Oh my God, you just gave me a revelation about this movie. You totally just gave me a revelation about this movie. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
No. It's just like it's like she's so scared of life and the idea of life. But it's something as simple as just eating a slice of pizza or just fucking doing it, just trying something in life, it could take you to all these meaningful things. Yes. And that's another theme of the movie.
Yes. And
this film is goddamn genius,
like,
Igor. It's goddamn genius.
The more I think about it, the more I like learn stuff. And so there's two big things I also have to say. Like other than that whole lesson learning thing, if we've seen a lot of movies that talk about emotions, and we've seen other movies that talk about emotions from Pixar. One way or another, pretty much all of them are kind of about that, the inner state of one's mind. Inside Out, you know, focused on that, hyper focused on that. But this film kind of looks at it from a much more existential plane, because it, instead of looking at why we feel the way we do and how, it looks at life as a whole. And it looks at it not as a segment from the beginning to the end, it looks at it as everything in between.
Yeah, and like what I was saying before is that this movie doesn't spend a lot of it does spend time, but like a lot of the wacky cosmic, like, afterlife kind of stuff is not really where you get your meaning of the film. It's really just doing like this film, the stuff that hit the most and was the most emotional had the characters doing the most mundane shit,
like the barber
sitting down, getting a haircut, sitting down, eating a piece of pizza, just sitting in an apartment, getting a suit made for you, playing a piano. Like it's not like WALL-E where you're in space doing all these wacky space adventures. It's not The Incredibles where it's like a fucking Marvel movie. It's not Finding Nemo where it's like this, it's adventure throughout the the ocean. It's so simple, yet it works so it works so well. It's like simplicity is really the best it's really the best in a lot of ways. Like simplicity in filmmaking, like not like simplicity with like the plot where it's just like, oh, just make it a bunch of like make it about nothing, but simplicity in what you do. Like I would say, like it's not like this film it's not like a Marvel movie where there's like a bunch of shit that's happening on screen. You're just doing very, very simple things, yet the story is what drives it. All the other outside bullshit of effects and action, all that, it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not what makes a film good. That's not what makes a film good.
I think I have like a dissection of that specific part of it
that
you're trying to grasp. Like I think what it does really well is that it provides you answers by not making it literal. Like the answers to all Joe's questions are given to a barber that is giving him a haircut. It's not an ethereal who watches all of that. It's just another dude, just another soul right there doing its thing. Or like the answer through the bite of pizza, or even the fact that when 22 finally gets her Earth pass after all of these things, she doesn't know how she got it, and neither do we, and neither does Joe, and neither do the Ethereals. It just kind of happened. And it's so important to grasp that, is that very frequently in life, things just kind of work out. Like things just kind of happen, and you don't have to actively achieve them. Not everything is like, can be broken into steps. Sometimes you just have to kind of know you're there and know you're right. And by analyzing it too much, by trying to comprehend things that should just flow naturally to you, you're getting on your own way. And my final kind of like moment, I think this is the way the film contrasts itself really well. You have really simple answers given to life through very minimal things like leaves and pizza rats. But then you have the other side of it, which is the concept arc, and it's super complex. And I think this is where the whole thing with the emotion really starts to come in, because how do you make an emotion feel so important? How do you make an anxiety and like this overall doubt in yourself and a lack of desire to do things, a lack of, no will to live almost, if you want to like go to the extremes? How do you make that feel big? Because that doesn't affect real world. That's all in your head. Those are emotions. Yet in this movie, right, the concept art behind those monsters, behind the souls that start to lose their way, it can be destructive to cosmic proportions, because they start to run around those pre-birth areas and start to like wreak havoc and stuff. And while it's not like real damage, you can see how this state of mind can turn one's soul into what is essentially a giant sand monster. And it's like, you don't want to be in that place, and it feels real. So kind of like, in one hand, you have simple answers provided with really simple things that make you focus on little stuff, and it contrasts with all of this high-level concept art that is like, this multi-dimensional soul processing facility with the monsters and the passion, all that stuff. And like, it satisfies you in every way. People go looking for concept art, they get it. People looking for answers, they get it. People looking for a Pixar experience overall will definitely get it.
And it's something that's interesting about this film that they also talk about is the idea of letting go in order to really understand something. And I think that's so true, because in times in life where you talk about depressions, like so say for example, you're in a breakup situation, you're in a you lost a job, you didn't get the part, you didn't get into the college you wanted to get into. It's so, all those things, like obviously it's not fun to deal with them and all of that, but if you take an outside look of it, if you let go of this situation, you could realize what it really meant in your life. And it's like, for Joe, it's interesting because like he had, in order to really understand the meaning of life, he had to lose it. He had to go through this entire experience where he lost his life, and then he could see from the outside, oh, well, maybe the piano doesn't mean as much as I think it does. Meaning maybe the idea of living life itself is the more important thing. It's like you have to go out, you have to look from an outsider's perspective in order to understand where you're at emotionally in a lot of ways. And I think that's an important thing for people to realize. So if you're going through something like a rough breakup and say person cheated on you or whatever, and it's just like, oh my gosh, you know, he was this in my life, and all of, he was that, she was that, whatever. If you take an outside look at it and it's like, well, okay, you know, well, how much did he, you know, did I really like him that much, or was it really worth it? Or if he cheated on me, was that person really the person I was meant to be with?
Yeah.
It asks like all these interesting questions, you know, about like connections and meaning. It's just such an interesting take. I've never seen a Pixar film ask these questions and have this dialogue.
Well, I honestly, I do think they ask these questions in other movies too. It's just this one is centered around it. This makes these questions absolutely like central to the story. You know?
I don't know if other films ask these questions. I mean, they kind of did. Like The Incredibles kind of did, where you know Bob had he originally his emotional problem was that his superhero life meant so much to him. It meant so much to him, in fact, that he lied to his family. And then, you know, at the end of the film, you find out that family is more important than, you know, your passion, and that you need to take care of them, all that kind of stuff, right? So these Pixar films, they do touch on this, but I feel like Soul touches on it so much better because of the fact that Joe is just a regular guy.
Yeah.
He's a regular guy.
That definitely
He's not
helps.
some special superhero. He's not some genius rat chef. He's not, you know, he's not, he's not like meant to be special or anything like that. He's just a regular guy. He's a regular person. He's an everyday man. He's the everyday guy.
I think this,
you know?
this even further pushes this idea that recognizing the simple happiness about your life and being able to enjoy it doesn't make you extra special. It makes you happy. That's something that every individual has to strive for. And unlike, you know, the rhetoric with like strive for the best type thing, it is the best and it's your best, and it doesn't have to be better or worse than anyone else's. It's your own, you know, your own mental processing of things, and it's your life. It's the choices you make with your soul.
Exactly. Hey, there you go. Let's talk about the voice acting a little bit. Let's touch up on it.
All right.
So Joe Gardner, he's played by Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx. I don't know what's going on these days, man.
That
You're
man's
amazing.
got range.
Okay? You got range. I remember back when I was a kid, and you know, you were more so just a comedian and did some music stuff, and now you're like a Hollywood fucking superstar, man.
Yep.
So congratulations to Jamie Foxx, man. You're really you're such a talented person. Like with Django, with this. We won't talk about I'm not gonna blame you for the Amazing Spider-Man 2. We're not gonna talk about that. That's not your fault. We're gonna nix that out of the conversation. But
why did you have to even mention this? It was such a good little point, and you just decided to.
I'm sorry. I had to.
No, you didn't. No, you really didn't have to.
But that's not his fault. You're amazing in Soul. You're amazing in Django.
And a whole bunch of other stuff,
You're
too.
amazing in Baby Driver. Yeah.
Well, that was
Tina
less
Fey.
amazing, but that was great. That was great, too. Again, don't blame the writers.
Tina Fey. Tina Fey in as 22. You know, it's interesting. Tina Fey is really talented. I don't feel like she deservedly gets the praise that she needs. Like she's so good.
22.
Her voice acting. Yeah. She's funny. Her timing. Like she's really a personality. You know, she's very entertaining. I'd like to see her do more animated voice acting like this. Like in same thing with Jamie Foxx as well. I knew this is kind of new. I don't think Jamie Foxx has ever done something like this before. I'd like to see the both of them do more animated films, whether it be Disney, more Pixar films, or please don't give me please don't do a sequel of this movie.
Yeah,
please don't. But more Pixar, other Pixar stuff.
Wait.
Not a sequel of this.
Yeah. I mean, even though, yeah, that's true. Pixar sequels don't necessarily suffer, but that's because they don't make a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, they're not necessary.
Yeah, they're standalone pieces. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, the combination of voice acting and everything else that went into this film makes it what it is. And I do think that 22 was perfect, like pretty much spot on with this idea of like hatred. And honestly, I think the whole film can be summarized, like the whole story between Joe and 22 can technically be also summarized in like this bit of foreshadowing when he talks with this the girl that is in his class, actually the one that plays trombone really well, and she's in the zone, and then she talks to him, right, like on the stair where she's like, maybe I don't want to do it, maybe it's not for me, and he talks her into enjoying it again, and he finds the right words to say and the right things of encouragement.
22 technically does, but like but exactly, but the point is that the passions in your life just is supposed to be geared towards your happiness. It's not supposed to be your obsession. The passions in your life are supposed to provide your happiness. It's like filmmaking provides happiness for Igor and I, right? It's not supposed to be our obsession. It's supposed to be add to the happiness that we already have within life. You know, it's supposed to aid in that.
Even though I totally feel obsessed sometimes.
Oh yeah, well, like there's levels of obsession. It's like, oh, I'm obsessed with the craft of movie making. I need to learn more about it. I want to learn this. I want to know this. Like, that's healthy obsession. There's healthy obsessions, right? Like if learning about life and learning about things that you don't know is very, very healthy thing. Now, if it was a thing where Igor and I were like, if this film isn't successful, if this script isn't successful, then I don't have, like, there's no meaning. I'm not going to be happy. That's the problem. You know what I'm saying? Or like, I don't have any meaning in my life besides filmmaking. That's the problem. You know, that's unhealthy obsession.
I think that's perfectly valid. And I mean, honestly, there was a point sophomore year of college when I worked myself to a point where I ended up fainting several times.
Ooh.
And that's like, you know, I've experienced that firsthand. What I thought was my place of concentration and flow ended up kind of breaking my body down for a second. I think there's a really important kind of thing that it seems like most people talk about on the internet right now. I was trying to figure out what kind of philosophical dogma the film is aligning itself with, and I was looking into it, and like one would say it's nihilism because there is no actual meaning, like, you know, there's no actual answer that is given to it. It's a lack thereof. It's the individuality of things, which makes sense, but I don't think it's nihilistic. I think honestly the closest kind of philosophy that the film absolutely follows is the view of Alan Watts. The existence of the physical universe is essentially playful, and we should be treating it as such. So like when you're dancing, right? You don't aim at a particular spot in a room. That's where you should arrive. The whole point of the dancing is the dance. It's the process. He did the same thing with music, right? People go to concert just to hear one crashing chord because that's the end of the story. If it was always about the beginning and the end. If life was always about just the beginning and the end of it and what you're gonna do in between, while focusing in the beginning and the end, it would be full of fear, terror, and like zero pleasure and joy, just completely. You will be deprived of it because all you will be thinking about is the inevitability of death. So, you know, Alan Watts, if you don't know who that is, do check him out. I'll leave links in the description. And I love that man. He just talks, these teachings are very, very similar to the teachings in Soul. And Alan Watts just kind of dissects it in a really beautiful way for you that talks about, you know, living in a moment, letting go of this endless pursuit of things, stop perceiving your life as a career, you know, a set of career goals and ladders, and more of...
And enjoy it.
Yeah, a free-flowing, joyful, existential experience.
One last thing. Let's talk about race, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I feel obvious. So obviously, race is very important to this film because a lot of the jazz, and Black Americans and how they relate to jazz and the history of jazz and all of that. Culturally, it's very I understand a lot of that, but also I just want to talk about what I love so much about this film as well. On top of all the other things, it's like the cherry on top. It's like the thing that makes the Sunday to the next level, is that is how they utilize our main character Joe being a black man. So in a lot of films, specifically about African Americans, they talk about, and I being like half African American myself, I'm very emotionally invested in a lot of this. So, unfortunately, a lot of them are more historical aspects of African American history, of the implications of that, and it's about like slavery or in civil rights and all of that. And obviously, people need to know about these things. They need to know about
like movies like
racism.
Movies like Django, movies
Yeah.
like 12 Years a
Well,
Slave.
not so. Django's a little different, but 12 Years a Slave is a great example. Well, which film like Selma or and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like, those films are very, very important because people need to know about these things. But a part of me is also like, another part of me is like when a slave movie comes out, I'm very underwhelmed and I don't care and slightly upset because that's not, like, we're people too. Mm-hmm. Our entire existence is not about slavery or civil rights or the darkest parts of American history.
Like
we're people too.
A political context.
Exactly, a political commentary. We're people too. We have wants, we have needs, we have loves, we have hates, we have all this kind of stuff, and I view filmmaking as a platform to tell human stories about real human people experiencing real human problems. And what I like so much about Soul is how they make a lead character, and it doesn't have to do with any of the historical, dark historical implications of that. He's just a character that's going through everyday problems about the meaning of life, about what he's passionate about, what does passion mean, and what does life mean, and he just so happens to be, a black person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like so much about this film, is that we need more films like it. We need more films like Soul, and to showcase that, to showcase that, and to have diversity, and to have, you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
To have, I forget the word, but representation. Representation. Yeah.
I think representation is the word you're looking for, but also, just to add to that a little bit, when we think of Joe and the way he's portrayed in the movie, you're right. We don't see it through the scope of race because every single one of his character attributes, while being extremely accurate to the character and to the environment the character is in, it is committing to creating texture. And the texture, like the fabric of reality they're crafting, of the real world, has to feel real. And again, when I think of Joe as a character, the first thing that comes to mind is a New York City dweller. It's not a place of race. It's not that he's a musician, not that he's black, not that he is looking for purpose. I just know that he is just like any of us, and that allows anyone to relate to it, which, it is obviously a place of representation, but it also creates a very perfect space for connection. Somebody like, and I think a really, really cool thing, and again, goes into evolving into the fabric of reality. They didn't think of characters in the film as a diversity ratio of some kind. They simply thought that Joe is this guy, and this is the type of life he lives. What would be most realistic about his life to make it feel real?
Exactly.
And they did that.
And if you can make superheroes feel like real people and to make your point of the superhero film about them being real people, then you can make films about actual people like me who have my skin colored about us being real people besides, our historical backgrounds. So
That's really
that's
well
my
put.
point.
That's really well put. One thing, and I think that portrays perfectly with like the scenes with the mom and pretty much every interaction he has with his mom and all of her
Yeah.
friends and the whole scene in the barber shop. That brings essence of a community. Like, the way they capture the community that is in the city, right, has the same exact like realistic feel to it that the character. And that is why we love Pixar so much.
Yep,
In this
facts.
specific film, they capture not just the character and the way they live, but also a very specific community that they exist in. And the pretty much everything they say has the exact relation to the plot and where it's going. But and it's also incredibly authentic in its own right. And
Yep.
it's really cool. And more movies have to do that. Don't focus
Yes.
on the fact of showing something. Make it work for the movie, and then make everyone admire the fact that it is what it is. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, absolutely. Yep, you're right. This has been Last Minute Movies.
That's last minute movies for you. Thank you. Thank you for staying. Thank you for watching. Please hit a like, subscribe, follow our social media.
Indeed.